Well,
protocol to escort His Excellency.
Nawaz Sharif has got more than a rebut from Narendra Modi out there. Brilliantly articulated speech by Narendra Modi, well phrased. He had his points very clearly made out. And one of the points I'd like to make right at the start is Mr. Modi went extempore at several times of his speech. We had a written copy of a speech, a statement, which is there with us. And several key parts, especially where he was referring to Pakistan, he chose to go extempore. Navika is with us out there, Shafqat Saeed from Islamabad, Prakash Javadekar in Mumbai, and with me in the studios here today, of course, Maruf Raza is with us, Siddharth Nath Singh of the BJP is with us today, and also Ron Somers, he's founder and CEO of the India First Group. Thank you very much, Ron. So we have a full house. Sudhindra Kulkarni in Mumbai. Good evening to everyone. Let's begin the analysis. Okay, Siddharth, to you first. What did you make of it?
Well, I think he spelled out the points which India as a nation should be expressing in the United Nations.
Yes.
He's touched and snubbed Pakistan. And also told, it's not just a question of snubbing Pakistan, but also telling Pakistan that you cannot continue like that. You need to create an atmosphere which is free of terrorism, and then we go ahead on talking peace. More than that, he has also emphasized on that India is ready to accept technology. India wants people to come and invest in India, and so that we start going forward as a developing nation to a developed nation. So all these things are very important. Climate change, he has emphasized on that, and strongly he has emphasized. So I feel, apart from what you have said, it's an extempore. That's his mastery. And very few speak like that. But he was clear what India wants, what he as a prime minister wants, and how he's going to drive the entire.
Right. Ron, your key takeaways from Mr. Modi's speech.
Well, key takeaways are that his very presence in New York City is extraordinary to begin with. In other words, here he is, the victor of one of the most extraordinary democratic undertakings in human history. The recent elections in India, more than 550 million people turned out to vote, the massive mandate that he achieved. And remember, in his inaugural, he invited Nawaz Sharif to the inauguration, as well as all the other SARC members. And therefore, he's extended the olive branch all around the region. And here he's now saying that we need stability. We need political stability, and we need security stability in order to develop the economies of the region, and specifically of India. So I think this is a very good first volley as he arrives in the United States, and as he moves to Washington, that theme about attracting investment is only going to be fortified by today's presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your first comments, Ron. We're going to come back to now the news point. I think the big news point, Maruf, as I'd welcome Shafqat Saeed. Shafqat Saeed, this is just the snub that Pakistan needed. Your Prime Minister speaks in 18 or 20 sentences what our Prime Minister articulates in 4 quick sentences towards you. And that is that we are prepared to have a dialogue with you. But it is your responsibility, he says, your responsibility to, and you must take this responsibility seriously towards creating an appropriate environment without the shadow of terrorism. Maruf, without the shadow of terrorism, you create an appropriate environment, and we'll go ahead and have not just a dialogue. In his words, he says, we'll have a serious bilateral dialogue with you. But those are the terms that Mr. Modi says. No prevarication on that. The ball is firmly now in Pakistan's court. What they've been trying in New York since day before yesterday, keep the onus shifting back to India for delaying the dialogue process or putting it on freeze. Now the ball has been put on the other side, clearly.
Well, Arnab, I'd like to make actually 6 quick points based on what Mr. Modi has said. Firstly, of course, compliments to him that, as I said, this is his coming out party globally. And in that forum, the man took to the forum like fish to water. He spoke extempore, and I've had the privilege of sharing the dais with him on one occasion. Believe me, he is one hell of an orator. But more importantly, I think he made 6 quick points that India approaches the world through its philosophical approach to global civilization and not based on any ideology. And I think it's linked to the Kashmir issue to some extent, where Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif went on and on about a script which was clearly written out in Rawalpindi and not Islamabad, if you know what I mean.
Can we get a quick rebut from Islamabad? Because I'm told the satellite link with Islamabad is on only for the next few minutes. You know, Shafqat Saeed, quick and sharp out there, ball back in your court. We'll talk with you if you create a serious atmosphere. And please stop spawning terrorism. I mean, that whole reference of what is good terror and bad terror. For you, the good terror, of course, is the Haqqani brothers and Lashkar-e-Toiba network. Pakistan has now been embarrassed by first its own Prime Minister's amateurish speech yesterday, and today with that tactical snub from Narendra Modi. What will you do now? What options, Shafqat Saeed, are left after this very firm, and if I may say so, strong message from Narendra Modi at the UN to you?
Arnab, good evening. Nice seeing you after such a long time. And I thought that you would have calmed down a bit, but you are still in the same fury. And your weighing, comparing these prime minister, I don't like it. And the way you are trying to develop this discussion, I don't think you want to develop a discussion. As if you want a confession from me. I've come here for analysis and express my views. Mr. Narendra Modi spoke very good on Indian point of view. Indian point of view is not heading for solution in this area. It remains hegemonic. It remains embossing. And when you want talks, it is not coming in this way. If you keep saying this, you keep the same old tone like that, don't expect that. I don't think you are serious for talks. If you are serious for talks, you have to value the concerns of Pakistan.
You see, Mr. Shafqat Saeed, the point to be made is you want talks. What we are saying, you want talks. We are saying to you that talks are going to happen.
We want talks to convey our concerns to you.
Which is created.
We don't want talks on
from
your wishes, and we don't want to say only
the fact that Mr. Modi refused to get drawn. No. So it's a very... Mr. Saeed,
Mr. Modi spoke very well
you know, the
on
fact
Indian
is
point of view,
that
right?
when a world leader
and you
goes
don't
on
accept
the stage,
the Pakistani point of view. Once you don't accept that point of view, how do you expect the talk taking place?
Sir, you see that Mr. Saeed, the only news point from New York today, in my view, and I'd like to bounce this off to Sudhindra Kulkarni, is that Modi refused to get drawn in one long, intemperate, feisty, long-winded, unproductive debate with you on Kashmir. He has made his point, and he has made it so firmly that now the choice is yours. You will have to now convince the international community. No, sir, let me complete. Let me complete, Mr. Saeed.
No, that is the issue.
I wanted to hear the Indian view, since you say this speech was aimed at the Indian audience. Sir, hear the Indian view, Mr. Saeed. The fact is, what was your entire purpose from New York? You wanted to somehow engage our Prime Minister in a long-winded and unproductive conversation with you, which is not happening right now. Tactically, this is a brilliant move. Sudhindra Kulkarni, let's get your view, please, from Mumbai. Good morning from New York. Good evening to you, Sudhindra Kulkarni. Yeah. Your response to our guest from Pakistan, from Islamabad, Shafqat Saeed.
Yeah, Arnab, I want to begin by saying that it was a very, very good speech, a wise and a sagacious speech by the Prime Minister, which combined both a philosophical outlook and a very practical approach with very specific recommendations to the world community. I think that our Prime Minister spoke as a global statesman today when he said that instead of fragmenting the global community by big powers at G4, G8, G20, the United Nations should stand for G-all. I mean, this is something which strikes an emotional and an intellectual chord with every country in the world, the smallest and the biggest. This is the voice that the world needs to hear, and our Prime Minister, I'm happy to say, spoke for the world today. Secondly, on Pakistan, we should not really make this debate a very Pakistan-centric debate, because he really gave a very positive approach and made a positive appeal to Pakistan, that Pakistan should create a constructive atmosphere whereby we can resolve this bilateral issue. And for this, There cannot be any good terrorism, bad terrorism, and terrorism cannot be a matter of state policy, as unfortunately Pakistan has been, and Pakistan has suffered because of this. Therefore, there is a lot that Pakistan has to introspect on what has happened. But I would say that the Prime Minister's speech, it really went far beyond the bilateral binary between India and Pakistan on Kashmir. Even on Kashmir, he said that India and Pakistan should cooperate in mitigating the suffering of the people, especially, as was the case in recent floods. So on the whole, it's a very humane speech, a wise speech, and something that really puts India on top of an ethical debate on the New World Order.
Absolutely. When, Mr. Modi's at the specific point, Navika, where he says that when we start saying good terrorism and bad terrorism, it raises a very serious question mark on our fight against terror. Now, there he raises an issue which has resonance all over the world, and I'm sure the Americans themselves, the meaning of that comment will not be lost on the Americans, who have themselves engaged with various groups who've gone on to spawn terror organizations, and America itself has been at the receiving end of that for quite some time. So Mr. Modi's comment that we can't constantly have this line between good terror and bad terror, we can't add epithets and prefixes like that to terrorism, that itself sort of dilutes the fight against terrorism. Very serious point there. I think it will go down very well, especially given the kind of tone and tonality of Obama's speech, which also focused on terrorism 3 days back. I actually think here, Navika, that Narendra Modi's speech takes off where Obama's speech stopped 3 days back. I'd like your take, please.
That's right, Arnab. It is in thematically, it is something that resonates with what President Barack Obama said here about 3 days ago. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has very deftly handled Pakistan in the entire speech, as you pointed out earlier, just 4 sentences. But he's made it very clear that India is not looking at Kashmir, which is yours or mine. We are looking at Kashmir, which is a sea of humanity where people need to be looked after. So he's made that, pitch over here, showing that it's not just a territory that you're fighting for. There are living beings there, there are human beings there, and they have sufferings, especially like in the kind of floods that we recently saw in Kashmir. So he's given this entire humane approach to the issue of Kashmir without actually talking about the political part, completely snubbing Pakistan on one hand. On the other, I think the biggest takeaway also is the fact that he's talked about the 70th year of the UNGA. He's talked about a 1-year deadline for the UNGA to talk about Security Council reforms. He's made a very strong pitch. India probably, saying it there in so many words, and a large part of that speech was dedicated to that particular aspect, including what we've been saying earlier, that the peacekeeping forces, the countries that own the peacekeeping forces, need to have a say in the running of the United Nations. And that is a pitch that Narendra Modi made. So I think, apart from Pakistan, it is the pitch to really be participative and get developing countries to participate in the whole decision-making process of the UNGA. That was the thrust of his speech.
Well, absolutely. Navika, we've been making this point since morning, that there are many positives of Modi not responding to Pakistan on Kashmir. But we also had said this morning, General Malik, good evening. We said this morning that the greatest positive of not responding word by word, measure by measure on Kashmir would be the fact that India believes that Kashmir's status is not under question at all. So while you need to respond to Nawaz Sharif, it is a given that Kashmir is an integral part of India, and the whole world does not need a constant reiteration of that point, especially not from the UN General Assembly. In your view, General Malik, how do you view Modi's speech in terms of the ongoing conversation and debate between India and Pakistan, both on the issue of resumption of dialogue, Kashmir, and also on the fight against terror? What do you think that this particular speech will mark some inflection moment, a moment of change in that bilateral relationship?
Look, let me first say that I have never heard Mr. Modi give out his global vision. Within 15 minutes, he has managed to knit together Indian philosophy, Indian requirements, the Asian requirements, and the global requirements, and how we can all work together to be able to defeat the challenges which are coming ahead in the 21st century. So I must compliment him for the way and the kind of speech that he has given in 15 minutes. Now, coming to India and Pakistan, as we all expected that he's not going to spend much time, the twist that he has given, the spin that he has given to whatever Pakistan was trying to convey is again humanism, which is part of the global requirement that, look, we need to work together as part of the greater, as part of the humanity, and that is what he focused on. Whatever brief mention that he made of Kashmir and of Pakistan was in that context. He spent a lot of time on counter-terrorism, which is quite justified because it's a major problem today. And he again emphasized the need for all of us to work together and not get sectionalized in good terrorism, bad terrorism. This is East, this is West, this is North, this is South. It doesn't affect today, it may affect tomorrow. So I think he was able to bring it together, and then he was able to convey his message that we all need to work together to be able to defeat terrorism. As far as Pakistan is concerned, I'm not sure whether they are going to learn it. They had a script given to them by the Pakistan army, which needs to talk about Kashmir for its own survival. But I don't think it is going to make any difference at all to any politician or any leader in India.
Yeah, absolutely. Pawan Verma, welcome from New Delhi. We're going to get a political debate on Modi's speech in some time, because like to see how different political parties are responding to it. But let's go back to this subject once again. Ron, there was a whole range of subjects that Mr. Modi spoke of, from environment to technology, areas where we can work together. He did not limit his references to Pakistan. And so therefore, the great takeaway for us and to an Indian audience is that India's foreign policy, far from being directed by Pakistan or being responsive to Pakistan, Pakistan is increasingly becoming a lesser and smaller and perhaps an insignificant player. Though, of course, it's our neighbours, so a certain amount of irritation will always be there with what they do wrong. But we are reducing them to insignificance as we seek global power play. You think this is a positive step? You think this is something that needs to be looked at in terms of a longer-term continuum now?
The letter that we need to talk about is Afghanistan, the mess that has been left by the United States in that region, the vacuum that has been created, the worry, I think, in Delhi that Talibanization of Afghanistan will cause a triumphalism in Pakistan that could spill over into additional acts of terror, whether in Mumbai or in Kashmir. I think it's valid that the Prime Minister has invited Nawaz Sharif to the inaugural. I think it's valid that he mentioned it today and said, let's not talk about terrorism, let's create the right atmosphere. This is a region that now needs to grow at 8, 9, 10% GDP, and that requires political and stable security in that region. And therefore, this is exactly the right message that the business community, that certainly the United States and other investors in India need to be hearing from this Prime Minister.
What in your view, Siddharth, since he's laid it out and he has made it quite clear here, that, on Pakistan, we'll talk to you. But we'll talk to you when you create the right atmosphere. Going forward, how do you think this is going to now pan out when he goes to Washington? Will he have taken away, any obligation that Pakistan may want India to carry for the talks not moving forward? Would he have taken that away?
I think the message has been very, very clear on Pakistan, beginning from Sushma Swaraj. She also mentioned that on the first day he invited at his swearing in, that was an opportunity and hand which was shown. Certain red lines were drawn. When Mr. Nawaz Sharif comes, he doesn't speak to the Hurriyat, he doesn't do anything. But immediately after that, then we see before the foreign secretaries to meet that those red lines are crossed. So the message was not that we will be doing dilly-dallying, it's a clear-cut message to Pakistan that this will not be allowed. So I think in that context, we have already done. Here, he is again reminded for creating an atmosphere. We are willing to take another step.
Yes.
So the message is there. It's for the Pakistan to realize. But I think where, as an Indian, I would say we stand, and particularly after his speech, the attendance in itself speaks volumes where India is now going to be placed
and can I just make that small point, on attendance that you make? It's a remarkable attendance here. It's an early morning session.
Yeah.
And very often I'm told that the early morning sessions are not often very well attended. And to all our viewers in India, if you want to study in contrast, you just need to look at the attendance when Nawaz Sharif spoke. When perhaps the only person who took Nawaz Sharif seriously was his chief of army staff.
That's right.
And contrast that to the attendance when Narendra Modi spoke. That speaks volumes.
It does
speaks volumes.
And it also shows, as a leader, the global leadership is being now given to India, and Narendra Modi ji stands there.
Yeah.
And the way he's gone about it, let me say, there's another important factor he has raised is the cyber security, protecting the sea lanes.
Yeah.
These both of them is also, giving a message to an Asian power,
yes,
that this cyber security and maritime security is going to be on top of agenda when he meets Mr. Obama.
What I found very smart, Maruf, is that it was a very smart but subtle and indirect way of saying that Kashmir is an integral part of India. I mean, of course it's an integral part of India. But when he says that in India we have organized massive flood relief, which we have operations, and we have also offered assistance for Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. I think that was a very, very smart move. And by invoking on the issue of floods in Kashmir, I don't know how you're looking at it, Maruf, but Modi was basically going beyond bitterness and politics. Rather than getting drawn into a diplomatic standoff that has been escalated by Pakistan, Modi was infusing his speech with a strong humanitarian focus, right, on the problems afflicting the people of Kashmir. Not the standard line which the Pakistanis were reiterating.
Arnab, I'm not a crystal grazer, but I think in the last
Please feel free to be.
No.
Because please feel free to be. Because Maruf, of late you've been proven fairly right.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make, that I've been saying it for the last 10 days or more, and I think, unlike so many other powerful people, I've managed to rub some of this optimism onto you, that, there is more to life than India-Pakistan.
Yes. Well, on that note, can I just add on a small, lighter aside, that over the last 4 days, as we've been broadcasting from New York, Maruf has been able to influence every single part of the Times Now crew into believing that this is the kind of response that Modi will put when Nawaz Sharif speaks. And you actually predicted this before Modi spoke.
Even this morning,
we've been speaking that line for the last 3 days.
This morning when I was doing the P2C from the UN General Assembly building and the UN building, I said, that Mr. Modi is going to talk about India's commitment to peacekeeping.
Yes.
We are 1/6 of humanity.
Yes.
We need a bigger role. In fact, he has said to make the UN relevant, and this is the point I made in your show yesterday, I made this morning, that the UN has P5 members, with the exception of the United States. They are all redundant to the 21st century. So if you want enough representation of 1/6 of humanity, you have to give India a bigger role. India has been paying in blood with peacekeeping, where others are paying in dollars. So therefore, it is important there. But I think he's made 3 other very, very significant points.
Maruf.
The first, he's talked about that the UN's, not just the UN needs to be reformed, but more importantly, he's talked about a comprehensive convention against terrorism. And everyone must be a signatory to it and follow it sincerely. You cannot, as he said, कि आप वहाँ पनाह नहीं दे सकते, which means you cannot allow terrorists to operate from your soil and then pontificate about being victims of terror and battling terror. Clearly, it was straight line, straight on to Pakistan. And as General Malik rightly brought out, he conveyed, and this is what we spoke yesterday to our Pakistani guests, that India cares for Kashmir.
Of course
and
we
the
do.
way the army has actually gone out and saved more than 300,000 lives against all odds, and 26 of them being the first lot that were evacuated were Pakistani sportsmen who were sent back in a helicopter.
Golfers.
So the point of issue is that India looks at Kashmir equally sincerely. If Pakistan claims to be sincere about it, our sincerity comes in deeds.
Comes very differently. And Ron, you've observed this bilateral relationship for a long time. I think what Modi has been very successfully able to do is deal with the issue, like almost, if I may say so, like a forgiving big brother would. Towards Pakistan, because when he was speaking, when he made these references to the floods, and to our viewers, we're going to play that clip in some time, I thought that he was showing that he is willing to put this so-called recent spat with Pakistan over the calling off of the foreign secretary talks in the backdrop by talking about mutual cooperation vis-a-vis the Kashmir floods. But do you think, Ron, that script will change? Or do you think today Pakistan even more frustrated with this, generous, big brother, forgiving, and yet very firm response by India will get provoked into playing the song all over again, the broken Kashmir record?
No, the worry is that India is absolutely on the rise. I'm not sure that Pakistan is. And we've seen that when Pakistan is in decline or having civil strife, and clearly they are on the brink of almost a failed state at this point, what you worry about is, do they act out in a way to try to hold back the rise of India? But the hyphenization of Pakistan, India needs to be cut again. Remember,
I thought it was already cut, Ron. I thought it is a fact of
signal that he
matter
talked
of the
about
past.
shipping lanes, and the signal that he talked about cybersecurity, that wasn't directed at Pakistan. That was talking about the northern neighbor who had just visited so graciously in Ahmedabad and then in Delhi. So in the end, it's India now on the rise, and we are taking a global responsibility, and we are here, and I want to announce to the globe that we are proud to be Indian here in the United Nations.
So were you reading that? I saw Maruf smile there when you were making that comment. Were you reading there Narendra Modi, who is telling the Americans also indirectly that you too are victims of cyber terror? There is competition in space. We are not against you. In fact, we put our resources in space technology to the benefit of our neighbors.
We're in Mars.
Right. So are we sort of leaning? No, are we leaning towards an American axis? I thought, though Ron did not say that, Ron is being very subtle about it. Do you think that was the kind of undercurrent that you saw there, that we are willing towards a larger strategic partnership with the USA? How would the Americans read that, Maruf?
In principle, America has always expected more from India than India has delivered in at least the last decade, since the partnership, since 2005, when Indo-US partnership really took on and the next steps in strategic partnership was articulated. The problem is that America sees India as a country with good technological skills amongst our people. It sees as a country with enormous capacity to build industry at cheap cost. It sees India as a country which has got huge market and accessibility for American technology. It sees India as a concert of democracies with the United States. But, America sees India also as a counter to China, which is where South Bloc comes in and is a bit wary, because China is a tricky ball game, and Chinese neighbors don't just visit us in Delhi, they also visit us in a border in Ladakh. Right? So the point at issue is that we are dealing with China on two sides. One, because as Martin Jacques says in his book, When China Rules the World, that China intends to keep India boxed in the subcontinent.